Welcome to the GCU New York and Dress for Success retail education event.
I'm John Seery from Saks Fifth Avenue.
I'm Mileisa Gomez.
I'm Karen Newman from the United Nations.
My name is Angela Williams from Dress for Success.
So how do we define success for both the employer and the job seeker? What is the thread that connects the training program to the job seeker and potentially to the employer? Well, I believe, and Dress for Success believes, that the thread that binds seeks to unveil the leader within. The attributes, the skills, and competencies that make an exceptional hire in the retail sector are qualities that are universally recognized in leaders. Qualities like problem solving, being visionary, being solution-based, being customer-focused, and outcome-based, all leadership characteristics. So tonight, I'm really looking forward to a robust conversation, considering this new approach to ensuring that training programs meet the needs of employers and that participants are provided with something meaningful and relevant. Rather than focusing so firmly on sector specifics and role-based skills, we should be focusing on how to tap into that latent leadership that is the overall and essential, quintessential potential in the hiring in retail, leading to new dialogue between training programs, retailers, and job seekers that will not only create optimal matches in the short term, but will set the stage and open the door to meaningful, sustainable careers.
I'm going to start all the way to my right, Mileisa Gomez. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Glad to be here, Frank. Thank you so much.
You've recently transitioned to take a whole bunch of your skill set to New York City's youth, but for some time you very successfully, I spoke to a lot of your colleagues in the last few days, worked at Henry Street Settlement, working with very specific populations and offering them training and opportunities and helping them come over some of the hurdles to gainful employment. Can you tell us in a general way what some of the biggest obstacles generally are? And in a very sort of, not a specific example unless you have one, but what are some of the first obstacles that people are encountering, and where are the training programs being developed in a positive way? Where are they helping?
We had many of our clients come in through the door, and a lot of them, after successfully working with them and getting to know them and prior to the training and the job placement, and speaking to them about, first they come from many, many different backgrounds. At Henry Street Settlement, we were focused on the Lower East Side population, but we had many of the population came from all 5 boroughs, mostly low-income population and homeless population as well. The main obstacles as I worked with these clients were the alignment of the training that they received with us and education with the needs of what the employers were requesting. We trained them, we built self-confidence, try to figure out barriers prior to job placement, because we have to try to minimize the barriers prior to placing them in the job. And again, with the mindset of not just getting them a job, so providing them with long-term employment so they can successfully pull themselves out of the current situation, out of poverty, and break the cycle that's been going on. So the alignment of training and education with the needs of the employer, communication, it was a poor alignment between the training programs and the needs of the employers. We often try to figure out ways where we can better communicate and collaborate with employers and educational institutions in order to provide the right training with what the employer was seeking.
Lisa, what are some of those examples where, so somebody's finding a training program, you've built what can maybe have the pathway towards success, and then it fails? that lack of alignment? What are some of the examples? What happens? What are you training for versus, or what were you finding yourselves training for that was then maybe misaligned and leading to maybe failure instead of success?
Absolutely. We have different backgrounds coming in, and everyone wanted something different. For example, if they wanted to go into sales, a lot of our clients wanted to go into sales. We would generally just train, like, build their resumes, confidence building skills, prep them with, a lot of them did not know how to use a computer, so we taught them basic computer training, how to use a computer, how to log into an email, provided them with confidence building skills, how to speak to employers. We would prep them in that certain aspect in regards to the training, interviewing skills. However, we weren't specific as to, the employers would tell us, we need people, send us whoever. And we would send whoever we felt was the best candidate for, okay, let's say you're looking for sales. Well, we have 13 people lined up for sales. They didn't communicate specifically what they were looking for. Out of the 13, 2 of them were hired because the other candidates weren't the right fit. So there was a miscommunication, and we were training a general training, but not the training that the employer was looking for and that they wanted. So we have people walk through the door, okay, I want to work in administration, right? And it's very specific, but some people are just like, I want anything, specifically in sales. We do not know exactly what the employer wants. They tell us they need people, but they're not specific on who and what type of, they say, we'll take anybody. But then they come back, well, they wanted a bachelor's, and they asked me minimum, I only have a high school diploma. And oftentimes, education, yes, it creates self-sufficiency, it helps you get out of poverty, but a lot of these employers didn't realize that these people, the apprenticeship and the training that they were receiving can take them further than what they were looking for. You don't have a bachelor's, I can't hire you.
Just baselining the requirements.
Yeah.
When Mileisa talks about alignment, I want to hear maybe 2 things, if you can. First, what are those characteristics that you immediately spot before you know if they're going to work out long term? What are those elements that, if you had to list them, create that initial spark, that initial sense that says, I feel good about this hire, I feel like we've got a prospect here?
The 2 things that I've always looked for in any sort of potential person that would work for me is a positive nature, I think that's huge, and a hunger to learn. I think those are, it comes down to really very simple issues for me, or characteristics. I find that those are the best. Because anybody can, I really truly believe anybody can learn a process. In retail, it's not, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, it's not brain surgery. So you don't really have to worry about getting to a higher thing about it. And that's what I like about it.
I think retail is the last sort of world where everybody can sort of step into it. And if you really, if you really have a hunger to learn and have a hunger to sell and be part of it, you can really succeed. I mean, and there is a backside to that. You can step into it and realize that it wasn't what you wanted, or it's too much of a wacky place or whatever it is, and it wasn't successful then. We took chances. And sometimes, most of the time, we did very well, and sometimes we didn't.
So speaking to the mobility portion specifically, I'm at Jeffrey, entry level. I neither began or didn't complete college. I'm slicing open boxes and putting things away downstairs. And in 5 years later, I'm Jeffrey's first assistant, or I'm buying a category, or I'm running an area of the business. I say that because I know factually that it happened. Right. What's that pathway? What happens? What series of events or training or personality traits, what creates that scenario versus the stasis, the people who get stuck?
Well, I think we were a very mom and pop operation, so the sky was always the limit in a certain world. I mean, it was a smaller operation, so you could only go, I mean, it was enough that you could really learn from it and keep going in there. But I do find that you're always interviewing for your next job. I had a manager at one point that told me that advice, and I thought, oh, it didn't really sit well with me, but I think it's true. Every job you're in, you're interviewing for your next job. Your performance as you do it is what you're going to be going to next, if you want to be successful in it.
All right, so now we're going to jump uptown a little bit. When you think of fashion, of course, you think of the United Nations. Right? Naturally, it's the first thing you think of. One of the things that we've been learning here at the Fair Fashion Center are some crazy statistics. 80% women in the supply chain in fashion. 1 in 6 people work. 1 in 6 people in the world are somehow connected in their employment to the fashion industry, from way back in agriculture straight through yarn into production, into retail, the fashion industry at the front end, etc. This was something you know and you knew because you are surrounded by NGOs. Can you talk a little bit about that world, its relationship to fashion, and how it's potentially a portal for a new path, for a new career, for even an entry opportunity?
I was always interested in social work and social service and having a career that was fulfilling. And I think now more than ever, that's a real career opportunity for young people. Most people, I think, that come to work at the UN or a nonprofit NGO, if you ask them why they want to work at the UN, they'll say, because I want to help people, I want to do something for the world, I want to give back. And I guess my point here is there's so many ways to do that. It doesn't have to be with a traditional career opportunity at the UN. There's various levels. There's what we call a G staff, there's a contract staff, there's temporary staff, and there's permanent staff. And people come from all over the world, certainly, and apply to work at New York, but there's also opportunities in various countries, as well as various missions, which are the embassies here. So there's 193 of those in New York that hires occasionally local staff, depending.
Destroying parking opportunities everywhere they go.
Destroying parking, yeah, on the Upper East Side. But I'm always amazed by actually people's methodology of how they get to the UN, and it's not one clear segue to going there. So for me, it was local government. I had worked in local government.
Talk about this notion of temporary or non-permanence still being a pathway to permanent employability and a career.
I think part of my problem probably with not knowing exactly what I want to do is that I always felt like while there's a beauty and wonderful nature of having your lifetime job at the city government or a public institution, I don't know how many of those real long-term jobs still exist. So to train people for those, like, oh, you're going to get a job in the New York public schools and you're going to have it your whole life, that doesn't exist anymore. IBM,
For anybody.
Saks, anywhere. So I think we have to be realistic about that. And while it's great if we know people that were able to sustain those jobs, I think the truth is people like a little bit of mobility. They want to have the opportunity to move around. And I think it's something that we should nurture as an option because it really is an option.
It's reality, really.
Yeah, and if you do a career search or job search and you look for temporary or contractual employment within some large agencies, including the UN, you will find it. And I think consultancies, while seemingly unstable, offer you and the employer an opportunity to get to know each other. So for me, I think I've been lucky in some of my contracts. They start out as a 3-month contract, but they can last, years. So the downside is maybe you don't have the lifetime benefits of, building something. But if you're smart and you save money and you're paid decently, you can still do other things.
All right, so I want to move now to the real scenario for you, Mileisa. And I find in success stories often emulatable behavior. So tell us a success story, about professional or personal, about mobility and career path and finding your way out of a situation and what it took and what worked and what got in your way.
Okay. I'm going to use myself as an example. Single mom. At the time, I was currently experiencing homelessness as well. And during this time, I myself started off with temporary work. And I started at Henry Street Settlement. And being at Henry Street Settlement, I wore, in the nonprofit world, you wear many different hats because, again, the funds aren't there, so you're pretty much trained to do everything, just in case something does happen. I had the drive. Confidence and having people believe in you is a huge factor. A support system, if your family's not there or you don't have immediate friends, the training, the job placement and the training place, wherever the institution, wherever it is that you're at currently, just having that support system, as far as counseling, who can you reach out to in regards to child care, who can you talk to in regards to your current situation. I was able to start temporary, and then I worked my way up into a more permanent position, and being able to, from my own experience, relate to the clients, I was able to successfully build my career path. My biggest bump on the road, again, was the wages that were being offered in the nonprofit sector, and being a single mother as well was also a reality to me. And being able to find the proper child care at the time, someone who, luckily my company offered support in regards to child care. If your child was sick, then you can bring your child to the center in the meantime, so you were able to come to work. Or they had...
That's fortunate and unusual.
And very unusual,
Yeah.
absolutely. Which is why I'm a huge believer in workplace policies that support low-income women. Because again, when you have that barrier, there really, as much as you have that drive, as much as you have that passion, as much as you want to be there, there's no way you can move up if you don't have that barrier, the assistance with the barrier in order to help support.
So you paint a very poignant portrait, but also show us an arc maybe that we don't always look at, and it's part of the conversation of training up on a particular skill set being really only one directional, sort of singly faceted, because you just mentioned something, and maybe we could sort of paint the arc, starting with the homelessness, shelter as the first priority. The job is an opportunity for income, but you just mentioned all of these other things that are separate from that: mentorship, guidance, specific job training, social support, emotional support. Are those, did you find those nested anywhere together singularly, or is that something
that... It was offered at the job placement seminar, and which is why I went there.
Yeah.
Because you can offer, someone might not have clothes and you're able to give them clothes, however, they still don't have anyone to watch their child, or they still have these other mental health barriers or any other type of barriers that are in the way. Mm-hmm. So what set this job placement at Jobs Essentials Training Program, was set it apart from other programs, was the fact that they were able to provide referrals within that job placement to help you while you're trying to find employment, to help you overcome these barriers.
So 360, just sort of surrounds you.
Complete 360, which is and constantly, and from my own experience, it helped also improve the program.
Are there any questions for any of our panelists?
What kind of opportunities exist within larger companies that allow for that growth, allow for that mobility, whether it's from the back end to sales, the floor? Because you identified a couple of skill sets that it took to get from the back to sales.
I think it's a willingness to ask a question and say, you know, hey, I'm interested in that position. I think so many people get nervous and think, okay, I won't be right for it, or he won't think I'm a good fit. I don't even like to say the word fit for a job, because that sort of sounds funny to me. That it's really about showing an interest and showing a passion for what you're doing, so that somebody says, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't think of you for that job because my life is moving so quickly, and I'm sorry about that, because I've had that in my own world. I have so much going on that I didn't think, oh, that person wanted to move from the wholesale, from the buying side or whatever, down to the selling floor. But they say it, you're like, oh, you actually would be a great candidate for that. So I think part of that is to be vocal, but it's also to always know to stay positive. I keep going back to that, but everybody wants to be surrounded by people that are in a good place, whether you are or not, and you've got to almost put a smile on, especially in retail, it's a bit of a show. So you always have to sort of always put your best step forward in a way.
And to piggyback on what John was saying, again, that's how I moved up. I had only been at the job for 3 months, and within the 3 months, I expressed my interest in moving up. And at the time, they said, no, we don't feel that you're ready. But within 2 months, they were calling me back and said, hey, remember Mileisa? She expressed interest in this position. And again, as she said, it's about being vocal. You know the right timing. And also, what he was saying, you have to believe in yourself. You have to be positive. You have to be able to say, go in there, because no one is the mind reader. And if you're not able to express that, they're not going to know. When that time comes, they're going to remember that you were in there and that you showed interest, that you're working within the company already, that you know what you're doing, and that you want to take that step within the company to grow and to move up as well.
So the best piece of advice that I received tonight was to keep going in terms of looking for your passion and understanding that it's not necessarily about kind of a linear, just technical skill set way of approaching things, but like considering who you are as a person and trying to align that the best you can with the passion.
My top recommendation for maximizing training programs would be employers realizing everyday women's lives and implying policies that are able to help these women, give them a fair shot and help them move up.
My top recommendation to advance your career is to treat every day like the interview for your next job.
My top recommendation for maximizing training programs is to consider other areas and other sectors in the public and private arena.
My top recommendation for maximizing training programs is to unveil the leader in each individual. By expanding their horizons, they'll get to see how clearly dynamic they truly are.